All right. I want to introduce you to Marissa Levin. Marissa is the newest person in my life who is joining us today. Hello.
We're
She's wearing pink for the conference. And no, we want lots of chatter, Alana. Plenty of chatter, please. We love it. Marissa has just gone through a Herculean couple of weeks with graduations, 2 sons moving, moving herself, closing down a very large home and moving into a smaller space because she wants minimalization in her life. Like, I'm so grateful that you made time for us today. She's going to be talking about the 5 the 5 pillars of intentional life. So Marissa, take it away. And when you're ready for me to come back and join you, you just let me know and I'll be here.
Okay, great. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Show mode. Okay, all right. I assume everybody can see me and hear me. That's correct, Suzanne, right? I'm just going to kind of go with this. Okay, so, I am so happy to be here. Yes, and it was definitely a Herculean effort to fit it in. And it's so wonderful to be part of such an incredible event. And how wonderful it is to be here with all of you who are intentionally committed to raising your own bar through community, through connection, through co-creation and learning. And I don't know if you are aware, although this is a pretty spiritually evolved community, but we are right now in a very auspicious time astrologically. We entered about a month ago the age of Aquarius, which is a time of revolution and rebirth. And so this kicks off a drastic 20-year cycle of change and quantum growth. And so intention has never been more important. I don't know if anyone out there has been experiencing this from January to now. We're now almost in the second half of the year. But the first half of this year, I know for me, has been whiplash. I mean, just the pace of change, the amount of change, it's just been, at a pace that I can't ever really remember experiencing. And some of this might be because we are coming off of the pandemic. We're entering the post-COVID era. So things are just moving very, very quickly. But we are definitely in a period of our life and in cycles where we need to be very, very intentional. So how does one create an intentional life? How does one embody intentionality in the face of everyday distractions and challenges? When we have competing priorities and demands pulling at us in every direction, how can we possibly remain focused on intention? Well, experience has taught me that it is our most chaotic moments that provide us the greatest opportunities to be conscious, to be present, and to be intentional. And Suzanne and I are new friends, but I would say that we're deep friends. We've had some really, really deep conversations. And my intention in life is always to move from a place of transparency and authenticity, because I have experienced when people make assumptions about what they see within a person based on what they see online, how many followers they have, whether or not they, are very articulate in their posting, how they connect with other people. Remember that when we see things online, we are seeing the very best of someone else's life, and we often compare it to what we consider to be the worst of our life. And so for me, moving through life from a place of full transparency, full authenticity, so that people really understand the messaging that I put behind my lessons not only just comes from a place of knowledge, but that it comes from a place of wisdom. And the difference between knowledge and wisdom is that knowledge is often rooted in intelligence, where wisdom is often rooted in experience. So the reason I'm so passionate about intention is because it is true that the last 3 years of my life have been nothing short of revolutionary and radical rebirth. And I am aware that this is being streamlined and it's live streamed, and it's being recorded. But I want to really be very transparent. I'm not hiding anything, so that you can know that chances are, if you're on this show, you probably have gone through radical transformation yourself. And I want you to know that I, as a speaker and as a presenter, can probably relate to some of the things that you've gone through. So I'm going to share some of the things that I've experienced in the last 3 years, and how being grounded in intention is what has allowed me, truthfully, to remain sane most of the time, and to cultivate that inner peace, which has been a big part of my spiritual journey. So in the last 3 years of my life, I'm going to be really honest here, I've dissolved a 27-year marriage, which was extremely painful. I ended a post-marriage relationship that simultaneously helped me to heal, but also shattered my heart in a way that I did not know was possible. And I've now healed from that. I've walked away from a multi-million-dollar business that I built after watching it kind of dissolve. I sold another business that I had with another partner and dissolved out of that identity. I launched another business with another partner. I've experienced the joy of watching my older son fall in love and move away to start his life with his girlfriend. I've experienced my younger son graduate grad school, accept a job offer in another state, and move him into his new home to begin his new life away from me. I've downsized from a 2,400 square foot townhome, previously in a 7,000 square foot townhome, to a 725 square foot apartment, which I moved into yesterday, literally yesterday. And I'm now stepping into the most open space that I've ever had to manifest in my entire life, which I am just so excited about. And one more thing, I'm a cancer survivor. So my personal and professional journeys have taught me that there are 5 pillars of an intentional life. The first pillar is presence. What does it mean to be truly present? Beyond silencing your phone or turning it face down on the table when you're out to dinner, what does it really mean? To quote Ram Dass, one of my most important spiritual teachers, presence is being here now. It's being so dialed into the present moment that you're in, that you are not thinking about what has transpired previously or what may lie ahead. We can only focus on one moment at a time. We cannot focus on the present while we are thinking of the past, and we cannot think of the past while we are focused in the present. So my question to you is, how present are you right now? Are you allowing yourself to be here now? Presence has become acutely important to me lately, especially with my father, which it was in one part why I actually moved to be closer to him, because he's 93. Spiritually, because of my own beliefs, I am at peace with where he is in his life cycle. And at the same time, I am so deeply aware that my time to experience him in this lifetime is limited. And so it is so important to me that he knows how much he is loved and cherished. It is so important to me that he knows that I see him. And so when we are together, which is a top priority for me, I am ensuring that I am seeing into his soul through his eyes. This is intimacy. Into me see. When we look into the eyes of another soul and we see that soul, that is intimacy. And my intention is that without even a single word, he always feels the depth of my love in my presence. So as you go about your day-to-day, I encourage you to ask yourself, am I present? When you're entering a new conversation with a friend, when you are connecting with someone that you've just met in this program, I'm asking you to do a presence check-in. Are you truly present with them? The second pillar of an intentional life is perspective. Our perspective informs our reality, and our perspective influences every choice we make. If we view the world as a hostile, difficult place, we will make choices to insulate ourselves from being unsafe. We will guard our hearts and relationships. We will avoid opportunities to grow because we fear defeat or failure. The intention of our life will be one of self-preservation, not of growth. If we view the world as a blank canvas where we can create the life we envision for ourselves, we will move towards this vision. Will there be challenges? Of course. Will there be heartbreak? Absolutely. Will life kick us so hard that we wonder if we can rise again? Experience has emphatically taught me yes. And still we rise. Every day presents opportunities for us to check in and shift our perspectives. When my younger son was growing up, like so many children, his development in some areas was uneven. And so there were times when others doubted his abilities and his ability to step into his potential. When he was in 7th grade, his teacher called me in for a conference. And in 5 minutes, she shared all of the things that were wrong with him and that were creating challenges for her to do her job. When she was finished, I looked at her and I asked her, do you think you've told me anything about him that I don't already know? That he has trouble staying focused? That he wants to get in and out of his seat? That sometimes he's in his own world? I am his person. Our hearts are connected. I am in his world every second of his life. Is there anything positive that you see in my son? Because what you see in him is what you will experience. We have the power to shift our perspective in any moment. As in right now, I encourage you to ask yourself, what are you currently doubting? Why are you doubting it? What story have you told yourself that fuels your doubt? What inner and outer voices have unconsciously altered your perspective? What stories are you creating about others that may be holding you back today from meeting someone new? By becoming aware of the influences of your perspectives, you have the power to reframe your perspective and therefore your path. The third pillar of an intentional life is possibility. When we become intentional about what is possible without empowering our self-limiting beliefs, we can step into our greatest dreams. I have a lifetime legacy mission to impact 1 billion people, to empower 1 billion human beings to live their most joyful lives. Will I ever know if I've achieved this goal? No, but this mission inspires me to get up every day and move towards this goal, to be intentional about where I direct my energy and with whom I invest my time and how I will apply my gifts. When we lose sight of our own powers of possibility, we all have people in our life that can inspire us to remember. 2 of my most important teachers are my sons. I've already told you about Jordan, and now I'll share about Jared. My oldest son, Jared, took on the task that most of us could not possibly fathom. He rode 4,400 miles across the country through 14 states in 11 weeks to raise awareness and money for individuals with unique abilities. Across this journey of hope, they raised more than $600,000 and visited dozens of special needs communities. And he's not a biker, he's a basketball and soccer player. His determination equally terrified me and inspired me. And yet he sought out this opportunity when he was an honor student, enrolled in 2 degrees at Virginia Tech, while also working full-time because of his wiring to think big, take on massive challenges, see beyond obstacles, and make the world a better place. One of his tattoos is inspired by a card I sent him along his journey. It is not the mountain that we conquer, but ourselves. And Jordan is also an inspiration for all of us. This little boy who overcame so much developmentally, grew up into a Division I scholar athlete, graduated grad school on both an academic scholarship, finishing in 4 years, and now has secured a job at one of the top cybersecurity companies in the country. When he was little, his favorite quote was from Kurt Cobain. "They laugh at me because I am different. I laugh at them because they are all the same." He has always astounded me with his level of self-awareness and self-belief and self-love, and inspires me to work on this aspect of myself every day. And this is why he is who he is. So I encourage you to ask yourself, how big do you dream? And what is stopping you from dreaming bigger? The fourth pillar of an intentional life is priority. Priorities are set when intention and attention are aligned. We often say, "I didn't have time." Somehow we fill every hour of our day. How many of those hours are intentionally filled? We can set all the intentions in the world, but if we don't create the space to fulfill them, they will go unanswered. My intention is to live a balanced life in what I call the 4 food groups: mind, body, heart, and spirit. This intention motivates me to feed each one of these groups every day. It drags me out of bed to work out at 5 in the morning. It fuels me to avoid sugar, processed foods, meat, and food that glows in the dark. It keeps me conscious of my decisions throughout the day. And ultimately, it feeds up to a larger life intention to remain as healthy as possible so that I maintain my financial and physical independence, can experience as much of the world as possible, and ultimately fulfill my lifetime legacy mission to raise the consciousness of 1 billion people. I can only do this if I am healthy in mind, body, heart, and spirit. So knowing who we are and why we exist directly impacts our priorities. In my office, this statement above my monitor faces me every day. When making a decision, remember this question: does this decision support the life I am trying to create? Does this decision support the life I am trying to create? Our priorities shape our destinies. Our destinies create our life. And I encourage you to ask yourself, what are my top priorities? How do these priorities align with the life I wish to create? And the 5th pillar of an intentional life is self-perception. This may be the most important pillar of all, for it shapes all other pillars. When you look in the morning, what do you see? What messages do you tell yourself? Where have these messages originated? From the voice of comparison created or amplified by social media, or the critical stories that you've told yourself so many times that you've believed them? Are inputs, opinions, and judgments others have cast on you throughout your life that had no basis in truth, but you treated them as gospel? How do we rewind these tapes and silence these voices? For me, the process of self-discovery and self-awareness and the transformation from self-loathing and self-marginalization to self-love has been deeply painful. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Enneagram. It is a system of personality typing that describes patterns in how people interpret the world and manage their emotions. And I've become an Enneagram practitioner because I wanted to understand the root of why I did what I did and what was behind the choices that I made. There are 9 primary types and 3 subtypes for each primary type. Our primary type tells us what motivates us to do what we do at an unconscious level. I am in the middle of this amazing year-long certification program to become a master practitioner. I am a 2, which is the giver and the helper. And on the surface, that may sound wonderful, but lurking beneath the surface, as with all types, is mud, murkiness, and dirt. And the shadow side of my two is pride and manipulation. So within my journey of self-awareness, I've had to ask myself these questions. Who am I without the need for validation from others? Who am I without the creation of dependency from others? Do I truly serve and love unconditionally, or do I do it expecting something in return? How do I serve without creating a connection between self-worth and service? As a mom, a servant leader, a devoted friend, the girlfriend who drops everything to support her friends, who relishes the opportunity to hold sacred space for her clients and loved ones, the supreme giver, which is a role I so valiantly play. Who am I without these roles? I've worn the badge of honor for self-sacrifice for so long, but is that really who I am? It is so easy for us to confuse our roles and unconscious motives with our identities. They are not the same thing. So this is just some of the work that I unpack with my coaching clients using various tools like the Enneagram and a tool I've created called the Worth Wheel to help clients identify what external identities they confuse with their core identity. Can you honestly and authentically answer the question, who am I? It takes intention and courage to do this deep work, to look in the mirror with self-love and self-compassion, but radical honesty. It takes intention and courage to examine oneself, accept oneself, love oneself. It is a lofty intention, but it is possible. Self-love is not self-absorption. It is not narcissistic. It is embracing the beauty and the perfection that exists within you. And as I've experienced along my path, devastating loneliness, excruciating pain, deep self-loathing, and experiences that have brought me to my knees, temporarily causing me to believe that I will never rise again. I can stand here today and share with you what I see when I look in the mirror. I see beauty. I see love. I see compassion. I see perfection. And as we come to the end of my presentation here today, I encourage you to ask yourself this: what do I unconditionally love about myself? And how am I powerful beyond measure? Suzanne, I am so grateful that you put this program together and that you gave me an opportunity to share my perspectives on how to live an intentional life. My hope is that my message has touched everyone listening to this in one way or another to help them understand the power that they have to live an intentional life, to shape their perspectives, to create priorities that align with who they want to be in the world, to step up their presence with those that they love, to know that life is full of limitless possibility, and to really dial into self-perception as they step into their next phase of their life. I'm so grateful to be here, Suzanne, and I'd love to ask you to join me so we can have a chat about intention.
You can stop. Shh. Oh, I think, hold on, I can do this. I can do this. I know I can. All right. Well, thank you so much, Marissa, for coming here and for sharing these pillars with us. They are so powerful and so in alignment. For those of you who have been here for on and off for almost this whole conference, I'm curious, like, it's so amazing because Marissa was off moving and she didn't know what the other speakers were talking about really, and has really just flown in to come and be part of this. It's amazing how yet again a speaker comes to the table to talk about her particular way of seeing the world. And it comes back to the same thing. Who are you? I started this conference off talking about the Tao Te Ching and how the deepest questions we ask ourselves, that Lao Tzu posed for us to ask ourselves through the 81 verses of the Tao, is, who am I? I am not what you think I am. I am not what I have. I am not what I do. I am not separate from you. I'm not separate from God. I am. When we can start answering the question of who are you as I am, without qualifiers, without modifiers, without any other descriptors or adjectives that define us or put us in some kind of box. And y'all know that I don't believe in boxes, not even thinking outside of one, because I don't think there should be a box to begin with. I just love that, Marissa, what you brought to the table had the same theme, very different languaging, and everybody has the same idea, which is because that's all there is. At the end of the day, all there is love. At the end of the day, all there is the ability to give more so we can fully live and serve in this lifetime. And so thank you for sharing this and your life experience, which, not that many people have been through all that. And some people have been through a lot more. And yet it's who we become through the process that makes us into who we are. So I'm so glad that you're here. And anyone who has any questions, this would be a great time to drop them into the chat. I am not what I've been through. Yes, Hilda, I'm glad you're back. Hello. So Marissa, I know that you have been a very successful entrepreneur, like success beyond measure. And I'd love for you to talk to everyone here about what that is like, because so many of us here online are entrepreneurs. And then there are people who are the other kind of entrepreneur, the original kind of entrepreneur, who are going out and they're building businesses and they're looking to get venture-backed funding. And they're looking to either exit or they're borrowing money from people to start. They're trying to grow something big from the beginning, as opposed to some people who are growing a entrepreneurial venture around themselves, their brand, etc. So I want to separate the two, because understanding the lessons we learn from one is very different than the lessons we learn from another. And yet we're one human as we go through them. So can you tell us a little bit about your past, your origin story?
Yes. So my first business I launched 30 years ago, which is crazy. And the reason that I launched it was because the company that I was working for, the man I was working for, I was a consultant in the telecommunications space doing education and training. And I went to him asking for a raise. I had actually sought out a mentor. So I'm 55 now. So we're going back to my, early 20s. And I had sought out a mentor on how to actually create a business case for myself to go in and quantify my worth. And I went in very prepared with what I was worth in the marketplace. I had put myself through graduate school. I had been bringing in a lot of clients, a lot more revenue than they were paying me. I quantified what my position was worth in the market. They were triple booking me on projects. And I went in there and I asked for a raise. And he looked at me and he said, "You'll never be worth more than $34,000 to our company." And so my mom, who I lost, I guess it's been 9 years, had taught me that you never let anyone else determine your value or your worth. And so in that moment, here I was in my early 20s, but when he said to me, "You'll never be worth more than $34,000, that was her voice that I heard in my head, that you don't let anyone else determine your value or your worth. And so there had been things that had happened in that company that made me feel psychologically unsafe. And so after that happened, I decided that it was better for me to work for myself, even though I didn't even know what that looked like. And, going back 30 years ago, Suzanne, there was no LinkedIn, there was no Facebook. There were no online networking groups. In fact, there weren't a lot of women business owners who were in their early to mid 20s, right? Like there just weren't a lot of me. And I experienced a lot of sexual discrimination, you know. I mean, men wouldn't even take meetings with me unless I brought a man with me. They wouldn't even see me. So it was a lot of misogyny to have to overcome, a lot of chauvinism to have to overcome. But I had been in a place that clearly didn't value me. And so I launched my first business, and my first contract was $35,000 in 2 months. So that was $1,000 more than my worth for a whole year.
I love that. Oh my God, ladies, do you hear this?
Yeah.
Someone told her she wasn't worth that a year ever, and she went and pulled it in 2 months.
Yeah. So, you know, my undergraduate degree was in English with a concentration in Shakespeare. So I never had taken a business class. My father was an engineer. My whole family was a family of service, very, very much so. But I was definitely the free spirit in my family. My older brother's attorney and doctor, and then my dad an engineer, and you know, so they didn't know what to do with me. But I had a passion always for communication, and I loved education and training, and I knew that I was good at it, and I knew what my superpowers were pretty early in terms of connecting with others and communicating well. And so tapping into your superpowers is really, really important, and stepping into that whole self-awareness. So I launched my first company, Information Experts, from my home. And I grew that to about $14 million in revenue and exited that 13 years ago. So that was a really good run. That was a government contracting firm, and God, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And I always say that building your first company is like building a plane while you're flying it. So for all of our first-time entrepreneurs on here, just remember that every day you are navigating something that you've never navigated before. You've got to figure out your altitude. You've got to figure out your speed. You got to make sure you have the right co-pilots, right? Like you got to know there's going to be turbulence, and you got to be ready to adjust course at any time. You're going to be in holding patterns. Like building that first company is literally like building a plane while you're flying it. And so
literally so funny, Marissa, you don't even know this, but the person who spoke before you was be the pilot of your own life. And she was the air traffic controller.
Oh, that's a riot. Yeah. So that's basically what a CEO is. I mean, I always say a CEO is a chief emotional officer because they have to really be dialed into the emotions of their people. But really, a CEO is also a professional air traffic controller. Like there's no doubt. So I built that company, and that was quite a ride. And I learned a lot, you know, and I take all of those lessons and I apply it to everything else. Then when I left that, I launched another company called Successful Culture, where I was very committed to working with leaders to help them build organizations where employees felt seen and heard and relevant and safe and connected to something larger. But I was very, very burned out. You know, I'd had 75 employees. I was exhausted. My mom was sick. My stepmom was sick. I was in the throes of taking care of my kids. I didn't really have a lot of child support at home. That was, you know, I didn't have a full-time nanny, or that was the choice that I made. And we could do a whole program around, you know, making peace with the work-life integration that, you know, the choices that you make. But I had a lot on my plate and I was really burned out. And so I operated solo for a while, and then I decided that I wanted to expand it. And a partner, a woman who I have been friends with for 20 years, we decided to partner. And so we created a separate EIN, and we built Successful Culture International, and we built a global leadership education academy. And we sold that last summer. And so I went through the whole acquisition process through that. And that was quite a journey. And there's a whole spiritual story to that, where I actually dreamed who was going to be buying us long before we ever had any conversations. And I reached out to her and I said, I had a dream that you're buying us. And she said, no, we're not in the market. And then 9 months later, I manifested that entire dream. So it was very much of a soul alignment, and it was just where I could feel the company would thrive under this particular owner. It wasn't about money. None of my choices have ever been financially driven, Suzanne. They've all been about soul alignment, soul expansion, and freedom. So I sold Successful Culture International. I launched Marissa International, which was my global coaching and speaking platform. But then 6 months ago, I just launched I5 Conscious Leadership, because I really kind of leaned into wanting to create an entity where we're able to elevate the consciousness in the world through leadership. So I created a model called the I5 model, and that stands for intention, identity, integrity, insight, and inspiration. And we have a whole model on how we work with organizations to elevate their consciousness through leadership. And so that's what we're building now. But for me, the entrepreneurial journey, and I was on a podcast called The Soul of Business, and I can send, your viewers a link to that podcast. I talked about how, for me, the entrepreneurial journey has been nothing but a soul's expansion. And so that if you can view all of our experiences in our life as a curriculum, as, these instances, that the only reason that they're happening in our life, Suzanne, is to develop and evolve and expand our soul, then you don't get attached from an identity perspective to what is happening. And so going through an acquisition process, having to be simultaneously in the past, present, and future in every moment for almost a year is really what it required. And it required me to be completely detached from the outcome, knowing that it didn't define me. So just it was a very spiritually evolutionary process. I know that a lot of entrepreneurs are out there and they just want to get their hands on angel funding and venture capital and, give away something that they want to build, which is really what it's all about, right? I mean, it's about a little bit selling your soul to the devil. I mean, you sell a lot of your control when you bring in money. I've never done that. And you just have to decide, what do you value? Do you want the money in, or do you value freedom? And for me, my spirit and my soul has always been driven by freedom, for better or for worse.
So good. There's some great comments going on in here. I know Alana asked a question earlier. She said, let me get to it. I think the question was, I'm trying to find it now. What is your morning practice, if you have one?
I do. I have a very disciplined morning practice. And I'm glad you asked that. I was an Inc. magazine columnist for many, many years on leadership. I actually wrote about that. So I am up at between 5 and 5:15 every morning. I meditate at least 30 minutes every single morning, and I work out. I've been training since I was 15. I'm a gym rat. I'm a complete fitness fanatic. So I've been training for 40 years, which is hard to believe, but I am at the gym. Even today in my new place, I woke up and I went to the gym over here, I am at the gym. I work out for about 75 minutes every morning. So I meditate every morning. I work out every morning. I have hot water with lemon every morning. I have a very healthy smoothie every morning. Sometimes I do some journaling as a writer, but yeah, my morning time is very sacred.
How'd you do that with kids?
I did it with kids too. I've always been really disciplined with my sleep, going to bed, early at a certain time. And then our gym was right up the road, and I was at the gym every morning at 5:30 every morning. It's my sacred time. It's, we have to fill our own cups in order for us to fill other people's cups. It's like the oxygen mask analogy. We have to put our own oxygen mask on first before we serve others. And that morning time for me is sacred. So then I would come home and my kids would just be getting up, and I was completely present with them every morning, making them breakfast. I mean, every single morning, and just doing even little things like my kids remember putting their jackets in the dryer so that if it was cold outside, if they were going to the bus, they were in a hot jacket or sweatshirt, just the little things. you know?
That's amazing. Oh, so good. You know, I think the morning ritual is so important. Like, I get into the tub every morning to talk to God. That's it. It's like,
Nice.
what do you have for me today?
Yeah.
What's coming through today? In fact, the talk that I'm going to be giving at 6 p.m. tonight, literally channeled through in the tub this morning.
I love
So,
that.
you know, it's just, and, you know, I think for those of us who are deeply connected, for me, the gift is having such a direct connect to source and being able to open it and let my mouth do the rest. And, you know, I think that when we've done the work, for as long as women like you and I were contemporaries have done the work. And when we say the work, we don't mean working. We mean the work on ourselves, that coming back to self, that I am-ness, that your gifts are enough. And I think the message for so many women is when you decide to live an intentional life, you realize you're enough and your intentions will get you there. And I'd love your thoughts on that.
So, you know, living an intentional life, and these are great principles and pillars, and I do my best, but we're all human, right? And so there's got to be a space for within the commitment to living an intentional life, there has to be a space for grace, because we all falter, all of us. I mean, you know, I shared.
Not me, man. I'm so perfect.
I shared what I've been through for the last 3 years of my life, you know, and like my spiritual path is the essence of who I am, you know, trying to balance. And we've talked about this, like keeping one foot in humanity and the other foot in divinity, and, you know, saying everything that is happening to us is here to help our soul evolve. And, you know, if we can let go of both attraction and aversion, then we reduce and we eliminate the suffering, and how pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And we, you know, we can try very hard to live by these principles, but we're all still humans, you know. I mean, the humanity of the soul's experience is the personality, and is, you know, is what comes up when we're faced with really, really difficult situations. It's not always so easy to be in a place of attraction, you know, to let go of the attraction or let go of the aversion. So living the intentional life, it is a wonderful, wonderful aspiration. And so that's kind of how I look at it, that it's, you know, it's aspirational. It's not always possible, because things get thrown at us and they knock us to our knees. And there are times where we are just in a space of where finding that next breath that we can take is really all that we can do.
You know, you and I have talked a little bit about this. I've certainly had my challenges in my life. Many of my people who've known me for a long time online know many of the challenges. If you're new to my world, you'll probably hear about them someday. I think that the thing that I have found about living an intentional life is the cosmic humor in a lot that goes on, right? I mean, I had girlfriends who forever were saying to me, Suzanne, you got to stop putting up with our shit. You just are too kind. You're just too helpful. You're letting us step all over. This is when I was much, much younger. And they tried for a long time to like help me stand up for myself and take care of myself. And then, you know, God said, okay, we're just gonna like collapse your whole neck. And you're gonna go into this very traumatic 2-year period of your life where you're not sure if you're gonna make it or not. And the cosmic joke in that was that I needed to be brought down to my knees. Literally, I called it pain in the neck. It was such a pain in the neck in my life to have my neck rebuilt, that I had to find the cosmic humor in it, which was that, oh, this was divine source, God within saying, you're not quite listening deeply enough 20 years ago. You're not quite hearing all of this good messaging, all this good music we're sending down for you to show you how to dance through life in a joyful way. You're not hearing us. So we're going to just take you out. We're going to give you an opportunity to start again and rethink it all. What do you think? And at the time I was like, God, why does this happen to me? Victim, victim, victim. I
Victim.
can't believe it. Why do I have to live through this stuff? So many people have it so much easier. I already had all these other traumas and these other dramas and the other, and another thing. And I just had to find for myself the frequency of joy. Because when life is hard, when life is difficult, it's easy to let gravity pull us down.
Most definitely.
And so we got to balance it, right? Because who was it who was saying earlier today? It was Makosi, for those who were here for, were you doom bonding with people? Are you hanging out with people who also want to talk about how hard and bad life is? And so part of living an intentional life is also knowing that the intention is, I'm not perfect. I'm never going to be perfect. But if I focus on progress, the intention for progress in all of these 5 pillars that you introduced us to today is not the expectation I'm going to get it right every minute. The expectation is that I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to find the joy in the moments.
Most definitely. And I love Makosi. She's a good friend. So the whole idea of doom bonding is related to trauma bonding, right? And so people will mistake trauma bonding for intimacy. Like, oh, you've gone through something similar. We are soul connected, right? Yep. That's not intimacy. Like when you are only bonding over the fractured and the broken parts of another human being, that's not intimacy. It's when you can bond over the healthy parts that you can actually create healthy intimacy. And as a giver, right, a helper, we love to rescue, right? Or I can say the former version of me before I did the work with the Enneagram and understanding.
I'm also a 2 on the Enneagram.
I am not surprised. But as givers and helpers, we like to rescue. So we are drawn to people who need rescuing. And guess what? They're dying to be rescued. Even if they don't think it at the conscious level, right? They're going to welcome that. And so then we get into this very unhealthy dynamic of getting depleted because we're giving and we're giving and we're giving. And maybe they didn't even ask us, but we're giving.
Yeah, you get an oxygen mask and you get an oxygen mask and you get an oxygen mask and you get an oxygen mask.
Exactly. And they're like, but I didn't ask you for an oxygen mask. And then and then we feel, very irrelevant, right? And expendable. So that whole trauma bonding, whether you are relating to somebody because they're like, you went through that? Yeah, I went through that too. Let's be best friends, right? Let's commiserate together. Let's keep ripping our Band-Aids open together, right? And seeing those wounds. Or if you are in that personality of like wanting to help other people and fix other people, then that's another way that you're trauma bonding, because that should never be the basis of any healthy relationship, at all.
Yeah, it's so important. And so for those of you who are listening live, I'm curious, like, what intentions do you have for your life right now? Drop into the comments and let us know, like, if you're being really intentional about this next stage of you, the next stage of your life, the next steps you want to go on, what is your intention? 3 years ago, I had an intention. I wanted to start an online business and I want it to be really powerful and successful in my own definition of it, which is that it's challenging people to elevate and to rise and ask themselves to dare to be more, to do more, to express more, to be there for other people more. That was my intention. Am I 100% there yet? No.
And that's why I talked about the lifetime legacy mission, right? Yeah. So it's not about quantifying at the end what that's going to look like. It's what are you doing every day that's tied to a larger mission, which is why my mind, body, heart, spirit, right? Like I need to stay healthy to remain financially and physically independent, but then also to be able to fulfill my lifetime legacy mission. And when you talk about like the entrepreneurs that are going after the funding and, want to bring in venture capital. Guess what those investors are interested in? Do you think they care about the journey, or do you think that they care about the end result? They care about the end result. They're only investing in you, not so that you can have some fulfilling journey. They're investing in you because they want their money back at the end. Like, it's a very, very clear motive on why they are investing in you. It's to make an ROI on the money they're putting in. They might be really nice people, but this is a business transaction and they're expecting a certain X amount on the money that they're putting in. It is all about the end game when you take investment. It is not about the journey.
Completely agree. Ilana says, intention to be self-sufficient while being a creativity coach. Ooh, I love that, Ilana. I can't wait to hear what comes of that and how you move on that. Stacia says, my current intention is trusting myself more every day. I love it because I believe that progress is the only form of perfection. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
And yet we don't have to have full trust before we do anything. We can move at different parts and times in our lives with figuring it out. I'm a big fan of failing quickly. I teach a class called Subscribed, and in that class, for those of you who've taken it, you know what I'm talking about. There's a whole day in that class where I go through everything I've launched that failed. Every launch that I had that failed, I go through, I show it. I also show the successes, but the failures are so much more important, because the big aha for people is they look at me and they're like, wait, you failed at stuff? And I'm like, yeah, don't we all?
There are a lot of investors that won't even invest in first-time entrepreneurs because they have not failed.
Yeah, exactly. And so whether you're getting investment capital or you're just thinking about yourself, right? There's a lot of people who don't launch because they're afraid of failure. And it's like, the only thing we fear is fear itself. By the way, that wasn't my quote. But what matters is that we're trying. You cannot lose if you're not in the arena. And as Teddy Roosevelt said, it is those who are daring greatly to be in the arena with dust on their face and marred faces. That's what it takes. And if you're not the kind of person who wants dust in your face, as you said earlier, Marissa, it's like entrepreneurship is a soul game. I say that it's the biggest personal development game you will ever play in your life. If you want to know yourself, be an entrepreneur. If you want to figure out your edges, be an entrepreneur. If you want to figure out your boundaries, be an entrepreneur. If you want to figure out your weaknesses, be an entrepreneur. Like, so much in it.
And at the same time, I mean, that's the soul's evolution that you just talked about. Remember that you are not your company, that your identity is not your company. As someone who has launched 5 businesses, I didn't even talk about all the businesses. I left a couple of them out there on my journey, but I've launched 5 businesses. I've had an identity of 5 different CEOs. I've had an identity of a best-selling author. I've had an identity as an Inc. magazine leadership columnist, one of the top Inc. magazine leadership columnists. I've had an identity of being the regional small business expert on a TV show here in the DC region, right? So I've had all these identities that say success, but none of them are the core identity of who I am. Like, all that stuff is temporary, all of it, all of the business titles, all of the, the accolades, the awards, like all of that kind of stuff. It's all temporary. So you have to know who you are at your core, because at the end of the day, that's what you're left with. That's what you're left with.
Yeah. One of the things I work on a lot with clients, be they private clients, executive clients, by the way, women at every level of their journey in life have the same issues. It doesn't matter how much money you have or how many years you've been at it. We all have a lot of the same kind of issues. And many of them come back to, am I enough? Am I enough to do the things that I want to do? Am I ready? Am I allowed? Am I supposed to? And at the end of the day, what matters is what you think of yourself, who you are at night when the lights go out and your head hits the pillow and you haven't fallen asleep yet and there's no one around. How do you feel about you?
True. But where we get caught is that how we feel about ourselves is directly connected to shame or blame that we have, right? Like decisions that we've made. I mean, and you know, I'll tell you, I mean, my kids have been my world. They've been my world. My almost 23-year-old and almost 26-year-old. And I will tell you, Suzanne, you know, I knew this day was coming, but moving my younger son into his home in North Carolina, like 4 hours from me, and this whole weekend was by far the hardest thing, one of the hardest things I've done. I mean, and so I'm someone who knows that her identity is not wrapped into her, is not wrapped into any role, whether it's a mom or a daughter or a sister or a whatever, right? Or a business owner, right? But leaving him down there, like 4 hours away to start his life, I mean, it's exactly what I aspired for, raising him, right? And then my older son, I mean, seeing him, let me tell you, when you see your child in love and you see another human being open their heart and you have this feeling in your heart that you can exhale because you know that they have such pure love in their life, like they're just parenting moments that it's very hard not to say, this is my identity, but it's not, because they're not even my kids, like they came through me, right? But they belong to the universe and they're on their own journeys. And I just was a facilitator for part of that. So it's very hard not to get wrapped into the roles and confuse them with our essence of who we are. It's very hard.
Yeah. And for those of you who've been listening for the past couple of days, you know that I'm in the process of giving myself an egoectomy, or at least as close to as I can. And it ain't easy, right? But I think at the end of the day, like I was saying a minute ago, even though we get stuck in the roles, even though we get stuck in what people think of us, even though we get stuck in whatever thoughts are swirling in our pain body, as Eckhart Tolle would say, if you learn to love you, if you learn to accept you, warts and all, the journey becomes easier. Because from there, you can fly. But if you're constantly worried about everything else and making sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed with everything in your life, so you can feel okay, then you're not that okay yet.
Exactly.
And I know you've been through this. I know you have.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's the journey, ladies, is how can you figure out how to be okay with you?
All the time. Right? And have faith in what's coming, and that knowing that the universe has things planned for you that far exceed what you can possibly imagine for yourself. Far exceed, right? One of my favorite teachers is Sadhguru, and I was listening to one of his programs. I might have been in his book Karma, I can't remember, but he made a comment that he hopes you don't get what you dream, because your dreams are limited. Your dreams are limited.
They are. Let's see what some of the comments here. Jenna says, sure, and I can't believe I missed the opening ceremony. It's not even like I was busy, but I did sleep like 3 hours, and then I guess I just spaced out. To tell you the truth, I thought today was the 7th. Now that's mom's not here and we don't watch TV shows on certain days of the week. My life is just kind of a blur except for Mondays when I have to babysit little Camden. That sounds like a lot, Jenna. And so I want you to know that all of the recordings are going to be, and already are, from the opening ceremony on Tuesday and from all day yesterday. They are already up in the guides. And so you can go into the guides section of our group and you can find the opening ceremony and everything else. So Thank you, Ilana, from all your beautiful comments. Thank you, Brittany, for being here. Thank you, Stacia, for this beautiful, all your beautiful comments and questions as well. I want to invite you guys to just help me thank Marissa for being here. I know that your life is full at the moment, and I'm grateful that you took the time. We appreciate your time and talent, and I'm enjoying getting to know you even better. So thank you for being part of Future Her.
Oh,
we can imagine a future that's amazing for ourselves and each other.
Thank you for the trust.
My pleasure. All right. You can find Marissa. Her deets are in the guides. If you want to post your PowerPoint presentation into
Sure.
the Facebook group, I'll add it to your guide so everybody has all that information as well.
I will do that. Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you, my friend. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. And thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. Bye.